Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
You're on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, and if you give the video a like, we really appreciate it.
Can also find our podcast in the description. Haberman, that's him. Middlecoff, that's me. Let's hang.
All right, let's talk about the Raiders draft options, John. They've got plenty. They got two
They do.
first-round picks. People want them to draft a wide receiver. I want them to draft a wide receiver. They're going to draft a wide receiver. Isn't this the best option for them?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, they went all in. Not all in, but I mean, they thought Antonio Brown was going to fix the problem last year. That failed. Tyrell Williams, nice piece. Probably a really good three, solid two. Hunter Renfrow, slot receiver. They need a game changer at number one, with their first pick. And they're kind of lucky, Guy, this year that there is a decent chance. I mean, I would say probably above 50% that both these two players, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, are going to be there at 12. And you and I were talking earlier today. That's kind of unheard of. Most drafts, a Julio, an Amari, a Mike Evans. The top receiver usually goes in the top 10, right?
Yeah, even if it's not that premium level of a prospect. And one of them's, you got two Alabama receivers in this
John
draft?
Ross, the 1 year went 8. I
Went
think
9. I think it went
we're
after McCaffrey.
yeah, I think they're really lucky that there are so many premium offensive linemen. There are going to be, it feels like, 3 quarterbacks. So if you get 3 linemen, 3 quarterbacks, you're already at 6. Chase Young, 7. Isaiah Simmons, 8. Okuda, 9. You see
Right.
how you push it down? And then you got the Jets, who, to me, picking right above the Raiders, very desperate for a wide receiver. Luckily, Guy, they're more desperate for a tackle. So that's where the Raiders, like if the Jets' offensive line was good, we'd be talking about, yeah, the Raiders are probably going to pick whoever's on the board between these two, where
Well,
it feels like the Jets are just going to have to go offensive line.
doesn't it make it fascinating if the Raiders have all the receivers available? It's like it's one thing if Jeudy goes one spot ahead and they just take Lamb, or if Lamb goes and they take Jeudy. Now, we could argue about Ruggs, but the point is if everybody's there and we really get to know who do John Gruden and Mike Mayock love the most.
My gut would tell me they'd go with CeeDee Lamb, just given when you look at what they did last year, physicality was a big part of it, toughness. Uh, the comp for our buddy Vic Tafer, the comp he used talking to people in the league was Antonio Brown.
For Jerry Jeudy.
Now, you want Antonio Brown, the person, and Jerry Jeudy has not been a problem at all. But I just wonder, the physicality of CeeDee Lamb, if that would kind of tip the scales. You're right, though. If they were all on the board, it would be fascinating just to see who they had. Well, who do you think you think they would go with CD over Jeudy?
I think they would take the Alabama guy. I think they would take Jerry Jeudy.
They proved last year if you went to Alabama or you go to Clemson, there's a decent chance Mayock's going to draft you.
Well, we will get to. They could take T. Higgins, John. They could do the reverse, right? They could take the sweet defensive player first, and then they could take the receiver at 19, given how good this draft is. We made that case for the Niners in our Niners video. It's a little harder when you have, even though it's only one spot difference, an earlier shot at one of the premium wideouts, and you need that position more. That's why this is option number 2, not option number 1, using the 12th pick on the best defensive player they can get, and then using 19 on a wide receiver.
What if I told you that the Raiders came out of the first round with Kinlaw or C.J. Henderson? I don't know if you've noticed, Guy, but I'd say over the last 15 years, the Raiders' defense has been abominable at best.
I picked up on it, yes.
Historically poor, as our buddy Josh Dubow has tweeted about many times over the last decade. They actually had, when everyone thought Ken Norton Jr. was an idiot, he actually had the most success of any defensive coordinator over that period of time. So to me, to get an impact guy on defense when you have a really deep wide receiver draft, and like they're not waiting like the Niners till 31. They're at 19. There's a chance that if you pass on, like Ruggs could still be there at 19, right? There's no guarantee that all 3 wide receivers go between 13 and 18. You would actually say there's a pretty decent chance that one guy would be there. Or they're just really good wide receivers in this draft. You could draft Justin Jefferson. You could draft Ayuk. You could draft Michael Pittman. That would probably be a little high.
It's high for him. But Higgins.
You could always move back.
Jefferson. Yeah. For me, the reason this one is 2 and wide receivers 1 is because this is John Gruden. I know he's a tough guy, and I know Mayock is a tough guy, and they want tough guys. But this is John Gruden, John, the guy that wants just wants somebody on offense to have fun with, I think. And sitting there with 12, he can get that guy. All right, so get a defensive guy, get a receiver second. That's a good option. Option number 3 for us, get the quarterback of the future.
Yeah,
if you don't think you have the quarterback of the future right now.
They've been rumored the last couple years that they were in the quarterback sniffing around. And Andy Reid's one of John Gruden's closest friends in the league. He had a quarterback. Andy Reid liked Alex Smith more than John Gruden liked Derek Carr at the time he got Mahomes, right? That's not even arguable. So this is the NFL. It's about winning, and it's not all Derek's fault. He's had some pretty tough circumstances since he's broken, that the moment he broke his leg or his ankle against the Colts, things got weird the next couple of years, even in the Gruden era, right? That first year with McKenzie, trading away Amari and Khalil, it's just not a normal situation. But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and maybe that if they got Jordan Love, if I told you right now that either at 12 or 19 that the Raiders came out of the first round with Jordan Love, is Saturday morning, is Derek Carr still on the Raiders?
I don't think so because they have Mariota. There's no point in having those 3 quarterbacks. Mariota's expensive for a backup, but he's cheap for a starter.
So then you would just roll with Mariota and Jordan Love as your group.
Yeah.
And
that's what would happen, yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
It might be, John, that you could do this at 19, right? You don't have to do this at 12.
I think there's a decent chance that Jordan Love is there at 19. I actually think Jordan Love is really, for all the players we talk about, for all the teams that are drafted in the top 20, wouldn't you say Jordan Love's starting to feel like the biggest wild card in the draft? Like you could see him going.
Yeah, because you can mock draft the first 9 picks to some variation pretty easily, I think.
Yeah,
my point being, there's 10 players that you kind of know that they're going to be gone by 10 or 11.
There's a lot of unknown. If I had told you, if the corona hadn't hit and John Gruden was allowed to go out and mingle, go put guys through workouts like he did with Kyler Murray, what are the chances he went to wherever Jordan Love was and worked him out? 100%?
Very high, yes, 100%.
And then I think there was a chance they fell in love at that moment where it might save Derek that John wasn't able to get his hands on guys that now he might have the ability to draft. That's why I think I would put this under 50%.
Yeah, it's not very high, but to your point, there's just a lot of the reason he could be there at 19 or that the options are so wide is, even though we always think, and we've talked about this, everyone needs a quarterback. There's not that many teams that we think are taking a first-round quarterback. Like even Jacksonville, who's got 2 first-round picks. Are they taking a quarterback? The story came out they really want to give Minshew a shot. Well, their actions actually have said in the last year they want to give Minshew a shot. Is Minnesota? No, they're not getting Kirk Cousins' next guy. They're trying to win, and Kirk has signed up for a couple more years. Is New Orleans going to do it? Okay, maybe New Orleans does it, but they also would like probably to try and win this year with Drew. So there's just not that many. Like Miami has 3 first-round picks. So that's 2 picks that aren't going to be used on a quarterback that someone else might have used.
They could though at 5 take another player and then take Jordan Love at 18.
Yeah, they could. But my point is that there's just they're taking one and they occupy 3 picks.
Well, I think if Minnesota hadn't give this out of nowhere extension to Kirk Cousins, they would be one of the number 1 teams we talked about with Jordan Love, right? You're right.
And they've got 2 picks, and San Francisco has 2 picks.
Yeah, it's a great point. All these teams, all the 2-pick teams beside the Raiders are just have their quarterback or are financially tied to them. Or somehow the Minnesota Vikings, it's weirdest move of the offseason.
All right. Option 4, trade back with number 12 and, acquire more picks. They've got, no second, 3/3.
Yeah.
But they can always get into the second round with their 3rd-round picks.
Yeah, see, to me, that one I would stay away from just because you have 2 pretty premium picks, right? You have, the quarterbacks push guys down, and they don't need a tackle. So basically every position beside quarterback or tackle, if they're going to stick with Derek and Mariota, they're getting pretty good picks at the pick at 12 is really, you could argue for them, more like having pick 8 or 9, just given they wouldn't have taken any of those players anyway. So, and the 19th pick, like teams love to be at 19. That little range is usually a sweet spot. And having the third round picks, you could package two of them and move up. That's teams like John Schneider trades second round picks like they're going out of style. Those picks move and turn over constantly.
Well, 12 is great in part. Now, you could argue last year they just drafted the wrong guy, but remember what happened? They were at 4, and the story was they wanted to trade back and couldn't. Let's say they're sitting there at 7 this year, and they're going, we don't need to draft one of these receivers at 7, but we're stuck here. Now, this year, maybe you would have been able to trade back, but just to your point, it is really a perfect spot. All right, so the reverse. How about use 12? You're close enough. Use 12 and maybe next year's 2 to move up and go get an immediate defensive impact player.
Let's say you got nervous, you were them. You loved C.J. Henderson. You loved Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
Let's say he's falling. You think the Panthers, if I say, hey, I'll give you 13 and next year's 2, and the Panthers are like, well, they might not be that good. That 2 would be really good. Or, hey, I'll give you next year's 2 and one of our 3s this year. So you go to 13, you add a 3, and you get next year's 2. You do something like that.
While they're building.
And the Raiders get aggressive to try to get an Isaiah Simmons, maybe try to get a Derek Brown, and they go, well, we'll also get, Brandon Ayuk or Justin Jefferson at 19 will be in pretty good shape. So I think the Raiders probably more than even the Dolphins, given that both their picks, they can use one of them, either one to move. And then they got these thirds, and then they got picks next year that they don't have to mortgage the future, but they can also get aggressive just to get up there. And is there what if you keep 12, like 19, and get to like 7 and use like next year's 1? A team like the Panthers, it's a couple years away. You could think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah. What if you did you use 12 and next year's 2 to get up for Isaiah Simmons, and then could you get back to 13 with 19 to take the second best receiver? Could you do a flop with the Niners and
Yeah, to me, then you start mortgaging a lot for a team that hasn't made the playoffs one time in 17 years. I'd pump the brakes a little bit.
I'm just wondering
there.
if you could take the Panthers second. If you do some weird swap with 12 and year 2 for a third that they have, you package a couple of thirds to get back up. Probably not. Probably gets a little weird.
You could argue the safest thing the Raiders can do of all these options, take sweet players at 12 and 19. Don't even overthink it. Just take 2 impactful blue chip guys that can hopefully help you compete to make the playoffs next year. I think that extra slot, now that 7 is there, if you're a team last year that won 7 or 8 games, you got to be going like, we can make the playoffs this year. Because a 9-7 team's making the playoffs this year, right? More than likely in one of the 2 conferences. They would have happened last year.
The Chargers might be worse. You don't think Kansas City's going to be worse at all, but they did just win a Super Bowl. Things happen to those teams. Like sometimes they would just win it again.
Yeah, to me, the Raiders can't even worry about it.
Yeah, we're talking about the 7th spot, not the first spot.
I'm talking about the Raiders worrying about the Colts, worrying about the Chargers, worrying about the teams, maybe the Bills or the Jets, like the teams that are going to be in their kind of stratosphere, and just being like, if we nail these 2 picks, maybe we're just a game better than that guy.
Okay, people will like this. We did not put this in our list of things to do, but we'll mention it. Draft both, use 12 and 19 for receivers. I think we think they just need premium defensive players too much, but people are going to throw that one out there. And, if you had an offensive coach who didn't care about defense and ignored his GM, maybe that would happen. But John Gruden doesn't ignore his GM here, I don't think, even though he clearly has the power.
What if I told you they got Jerry Jeudy and Justin Jefferson in the first round?
Yeah, right. But remember, this is a team that had 3 first-rounders last year and used 2 of them on defense.
But you could argue the last couple of years they've used so many picks on defenses eventually, and the free agency was a lot of defensive players. John Gruden wants to score points.
I want him to score points.
Me too.
Let us know what you think about the Raiders draft options in the comments.
Like it.